Well, yes, we're still looking at this ASUU strike. Only yesterday, Vice President Professor Yemi Oshibajo, who was visited by APC governors, told them that they need to act fast on the economy and ASUU strike. If I may, I'm going to read a bit of what he said, what he was quoted to have said, because it didn't seem that that was something that the media was allowed to cover. But from what we understand, he said that he regrets that doctors are restrained by regulations to advertise, and as a result, many people are unaware of the level of quality medical services available here in Nigeria. And he also talked about important national issues which were raised, especially regarding ASUU strike. He says we all need to work together on these critical issues. We need to think through things, and we need to do it fast. Those were the words of the Vice President, who is a professor, maybe by extension, a member of ASUU. We have with us this morning another professor is recently being elevated to that position. Professor Oke Kichuku is Executive Director of Development Specs Academy. You're welcome to Sunrise City this morning.
Thank you very much.
Are you joining the ranks of ASUU as well?
I was. I was a member of ASUU while in Unilag as a lecturer.
Okay.
And I recall I attended about 2 or 3 meetings, and I didn't for the rest of the time I was teaching.
Was there a reason you didn't do that?
Yes, the meetings were always a little more rowdy than I could stand, and all of that. But it's purely disposition. I love the job. I had no real interest. That's why even after I resigned as a lecturer in Unilag, I still was teaching there for 3 years without pay, while on the editorial board of the Guardian. So, but ASUU, the crisis, ASUU has its point. Let's not kid ourselves. I listened to part of the last conversation. If you talk about ASUU, asking us to call off the strike, to what extent can you say that ASUU enjoys going on strike? Is it an irresponsible organization? Are ASUU members not parents? Don't they love their job? Are there agreements that were not met? As the ASUU president was saying, are there things the government should have done it didn't do? These are the questions to address. And when you say, you know, it's become the sort of thing we had under military rule, the government will not be intimidated. The government is a service platform, nothing more. If you're a father, you're not feeding your children, and they say, oh, daddy, we want food, your response will not be, oh, I will not be intimidated in this house. You explain to the children why there's no food, let them bear with you. So that's understandable. It's dragged on for too long. And on the side of government, there are also issues that we must note that ASUU might need to pay attention to. For instance, part of the demand, you know, that, look, let's have a record of all your lecturers, all your staff, and all of that. So if I'm teaching in a number of universities and in multiple pay and doing all kinds of things, I wouldn't want anybody to send that kind of list to the government, isn't it? That's part of what ASUU hasn't done. But these are totally tangential matters to the core issue of what I see as an irresponsible management of the human capital factory of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. 6 months, and you say it's money? Look at government expenditure within the period under reference on all kinds of things. Look at the borrowings. We're borrowing to consume. So the issues are real. The schools ought to reopen, but let's not pretend that by demonizing one party in this disagreement that will achieve anything. If there's a serial, and this is not about Buhari government, there's been serial disregard for the meaningful demands of ASUU long before this government. But there's never been a case where we had 6-month strike. And the no work, no pay rule, I recall the announcement that it was
we've had longer.
Oh, yeah.
We've had longer strikes.
I know.
9 months.
Yes, but the point is this. This is 2022.
Indeed.
And look at what our youths are doing without recourse to government. Look at the number of people shipping out of the country for that reason, and see where the rest of us are. So the no work, no pay thing is also, no, we are showing it. Why did they stop work? Once you answer that question, it becomes a little difficult to sustain the no work, no pay argument.
So when you ask that question, it now depends on who you ask. For ASUU, they will tell you that there were agreements that they had reached. and that this was not fulfilled, or that government was dragging its feet in fulfilling them. They only fulfilled certain parts, and they were due for another tranche, and the government hasn't performed or hasn't fulfilled that part. If you ask government, I think the primary reason, they will tell you, yeah, there are lots of secondary issues, but the primary reason was IPPS. The mode of paying lecturers.
Yes.
And how the lecturers had kicked back that, no, you cannot use IPPS to pay us. We're a different cadre of public servants.
So, yeah.
And government says, you are employees. You cannot dictate to us how we'll pay you. And that was a big bone of contention.
On the face of it, the logic seems to make sense. But if I'm a staff of Channels TV, and your rules of engagement are that any staff who is 30 years of age will be disengaged. Once by your record I'm 30, my name drops from the list, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But we now bring somebody who has terms of engagement that requires him to exit after 35 years. It will affect him. That's one. Two, is it true that the academic and the university staff who have engaged, who have gone on to IPs, have had fluctuations in their monthly pay? Often to their disadvantage, the answer is yes. Has it been resolved? The answer is no. So it's not about muzzling. It's not about saying uniform pay. The pretense, for instance, that IPs is a flawless platform is a joke. Even when Okonjo, before the last government left, you remember the consistent discoveries, because these are imputed by people, these are imputed by people, it can be corrupted. So the matter of the IPs debate, IPPS, debate, is not as simple as it's being made to look. Are there living lecturers who can show you consistently? Because, initially some people went in and registered, and they got hammered. You have 30,000 of your salary, you have 15, the other person had 53 on it. You complain, it keeps going on, and they start regretting. Then they want to get by their colleagues, say, well, we warned you. So let's not pretend. You see, this matter of each one trying to demonize the other will not help anybody, particularly our children. The children need to get back to school.
Should we be looking for negotiators right now?
That would presume.
Because it would seem that both parties, I mean, as much as we hear, oh, they are sitting at a table, but when we hear both parties come out to address the media, is it the Minister of Education? I mean, initially it was the Minister of Labor who was speaking on these issues, but it looks like right now his negotiation skills are now in doubt in terms of...
That's the assumption, on the original assumption that he had negotiating skills, isn't it?
Okay, so that has now been set aside, and the Minister of Education has been asked to take over. But when he came to address the press with regards to ASUU strike, his words did not seem like they were being conciliatory.
No,
he had pretty strong words in terms of what he thinks that students should be doing to ASUU. He's asking parents and students to sue ASUU, etc., etc. Those were not conciliatory words, even though we'll hear much later, oh, it was seen that ASUU is about to end the strike. They've finally made headway, etc., etc. Only for us to now hear that, oh, it's now an indefinite and total strike action.
Yes.
So at this point, because it looks like hardline positions are being taken, should we be looking for negotiators? And if we were to look for negotiators, who would they be?
Well, first, the minister was the same minister who walked out on students, isn't it?
Indeed.
It's the same minister who told us before this last hardline position that there were these concessions they were going to make, and he was taking over from Ngige. And he came on with a hardline position. So perhaps egos are coming into the matter. Then negotiators. I'm a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators. It's the top negotiating platform in this country. But to look for negotiators for ASUU and for the federal government is to presume lack of capacity in two very capacitated platforms, the federal government and ASUU, that produces the highest level of human capital at the level of intellectual development. They don't need negotiators. We need to address the egos of the people, parties concerned, particularly in government. Without prejudice to whatever information, to those who have information I may not have, I am not convinced that the Labor Minister, Dr. Chris Ngige, and the Education Minister have presented themselves with the right disposition and temperament for conflict resolution. I may be mistaken, but that's the impression I have, and that's the impression out there. you people are not being of good behavior. Are you talking to nursery school children? Those are the, so they are not going to look for any negotiators. It's a complete collapse of primary sense of responsibility towards the Nigerian citizen, and they have to get to the bottom of it. What will the negotiator do? Put gun to their head to agree? It's not going to happen. And if you look at, you spoke of hardline position, apart from the statements of the minister, what was his demeanor? There was anger. Kind of, what, I mean, it's about time these guys are beaten into line. Who are you talking to? For how long will you be minister? Even if it's a hereditary position, are you going to be on earth forever? 6 months, people's children, 21st century, no capacity. On top of it, there are no jobs, their parents are not earning enough, there's insecurity. And you think it is good to have young people with a lot of energy out of school? What is it you can meet to get these guys back into the classroom, even from the angle of getting the youths off the streets? Then you begin to engage from there.
The words of the vice president, do they give you hope?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to congratulate us, all of us Nigerians, that the vice president had given us reason to be proud of our medical personnel. He stayed here, he was treated, it was a complicated situation from what we had, and he's in good health. So I'd like to congratulate him on that. Now, what he said, my question would be, sir, who are you addressing? You say we need to move to act on these things. Now, that's the Vice President of the Federal Republic. So who is he addressing?
APC governors.
APC governors? Is he not above APC governors? So the statement is, in my view, and I think it's a little, I wouldn't want to use the word unfortunate, but I don't know whether it's appropriate. The sense of urgency is what he's supposed to exhibit in the actions of government. I can understand some of the challenges, but the truth of the matter is that there is a sitting government telling us about urgency on the matters which is on its table to address. So there, I see very little to celebrate. I see a bit of whimpering, actually, a suggestion of helplessness, an indication that even probably the right sense of duty and focus was disaligned while that statement was being made. You're talking to APC governors. We need to act urgently on ASUU, on the economy, and on security. Every statement has a target audience. That statement should come from Nigerians and has been coming from Nigerians to the government of which is a part. So I don't know the value, with all due respect to the gentleman.
Let me flip this to my colleagues.
Well, good morning, Dr. K. Congrats on your elevation as well. And but ever since then, you know, the VP has since traveled. I think today he's traveled to the United States. He'll also be meeting the Vice President of the U.S. concerning this energy transition. So there are several meetings lined up. But speaking of which, you know, the President also met the APC governors yesterday. And therein he said, look, the dailies have interpreted it in different ways. It says, some say, count me out of any rigging. No one should use personal resources to intimidate anybody during that elections. Now, how people internalize that, it differs. So for you, how does that come across to you when you hear or read about those kind of narratives from the president following his meeting with the governors saying, look, he expects things to almost saying go, let people's votes count?
Well, it's a good development if you're talking generally about democracy, because what it means is that he's saying, look, I'm not going to assist or support anybody who tries to violate the electoral process. So it's a commendable thing to say. Now, looking at the history of elections, and particularly more recently, the selection of candidates for the parties, we must say in fairness to Buhari that he didn't have any special candidate. At the last moment, yes, there was this unsuccessful attempt to foist Ahmed Lawan, the Senate president. He didn't work. But after that, there was no indication that the president was actually interested in any particular person emerging. And contrary to some of the strongest speculations, Bola Tinubu emerged. And yes, it is rumored that a lot of money changed hands. It was also confirmed by I think some comments from EFCC that yes, there was a lot of money. They went there and all of that. I can't confirm or verify that. But what to take from there before we get back to the primary comment of the president is that support for fair elections is different from what you call indifference to how people behave in order to win elections. So there was perception of indifference in terms from the angle of the moral fabric of the nation, that people could gather in Eagle Square, spend a lot of money, emerge as candidates, and everybody felt that was okay. So that's the angle. So the statement he made is reassuring from the angle of support for genuine democracy. But to make that statement and then disengage, as is often perceived to do, and allow people to do whatever they like, that's the fear. That's the part of it that gives me some concern.
Okay. Now,
because if you look at all, yes.
Concerning the part where you say, well, he didn't have any preferred candidates for the party primaries, wherein the presidential flag bearer now, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, emerged. So what if, because many will think, or some will think that, well, since he is the leader of the party, he's talking to party members, he may be referring to the party's presidential flag bearer. Now, assuming that were the case, will the party flag bearer say, wait a minute, why would I need you to do anything for me? Because in the first place, you didn't support anyone. I emerged without your help, quote and unquote. So why would I need your help this time around to win the elections? Because after all, he may say that he had got people, he can go the whole hog. So will that be tenable?
Well, it will be presumed tenable, but it will be a dangerous assumption to make for Tinubu, and for several reasons. If you look at the configuration of political forces, Tinubu still needs support both from the president and from the rest of from other members of his party. The other part is, and that's a speculation that's also going on. Of course, you know the usual permutations people try to imagine that, oh, you know, why he's not really worried is because he's not really a Tinubu presidency, it's a Shettima presidency, that Shettima is the actual candidate, that Tinubu is not expected to be strong enough to run. If indeed he runs and wins, that he may not, and this is pure speculation and has no basis in reality as far as I'm concerned, but it's a matter we share on occasions like this as opinion in the public domain, and that even if he then wins, it will actually be, yes, he has emerged as president, but in a short while somebody else will take over. That is also something they should worry about. But for Tinubu himself, no, it will not be good to assume and act as if they don't matter. Unfortunately, he's not doing that.
The president's statement about not getting involved in rigging, is it a product of timing? You know, the president is not returning. He has, his tenure will elapse in a few months from now. And can we weigh that statement on the outcome of just concluded elections, you know, in Ekiti and Osun states to say that, okay, it is a test of what we're going to see in the general elections in 2023?
Maybe yes, but we should even go further back to the elections, the local government elections in Abuja, much earlier, and the Anambra elections. If you recall, in that election, APC lost in places they were sure they would not lose. And that, I think that's where the INEC used, the INEC used that election to test the beavers and also used the Anambra election. So 3 months to go, or a few months to go, actually the government is already gone. I am not sure it's a product of this reflection that, oh, we're about to go, let me say the right things. From my experience, and this is my own perception of the tenure of the president, he makes statements on occasions that one may not be able always to anchor on any real, what do you call it, deliverables or expected outcomes. If, for instance, there's a bombing now, you will hear that he has ordered the security agencies to deal ruthlessly with the bandits. Another one, of course, he says he's shocked. Another cause he says is that so these repeated directives. So one, over time, has found it difficult to anchor much on the statements on all the statements he makes generally on national issues. And so I'm tempted in the instant case to also classify this one as one of those things he says whenever there's an opportunity to speak in public. Because you can't link it to any subsequent action, suggestion, or initiative beyond the statement.
Well, I'd also like us to look at what was not said, particularly because the governors, the progressive governors, also met with the VP after a meeting with the president, but they didn't brief. We'll look at that, but we must take some messages now. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Yes, indeed. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. We also have Professor Oke Ikechukwu with us. He's with us in our Abuja studio. Prof, the governors, progressive governors, also met with the vice president, and the outcome of that meeting was that, look, let's do something urgently about the economy and the ASUU strike. Does it look to you, even though the governors didn't brief after meeting with the president, that this administration still has the plot where the economy is concerned, even though we have just a few months to the end of the administration?
No, the administration doesn't have the time. It does not, in my view, also have the conceptual framework. And the governors, you say they are progressive. I don't know in what direction they are progressing. Maybe they are. I don't know what progressive ideas they put on the table, either at the federal or state levels. Because you see, national discourse should not rest on the comments people holding positions come to present in the press. Each of the progressive governors, please let's go and assess their states on the basis of how the economy was before they came in and how it is today. Security, youth development, internally generated revenue, performance in terms of budget implementation, the condition of roads, the level of control over local government administration. Those are some of the things to put on the table. These are governors who are substantive heads of sections of the Federal Republic. So it's not about the vice presidency. I thought I should put that on the table so that this title of progressive, that means the other governors are not progressive. And if they are not, tell us what you're doing that's so wonderful that we must call you progressive. You know, so going there to talk about, so back to the original point I made, what are they going to do about the economy? We're importing fuel. Fuel is draining foreign exchange. Right now, we've had complaints of non-remittance from NNPC. The CBN has been complaining about that. So with non-remittance, limited availability of dollars, the value of the naira will continue to crash. Insecurity is also impacting negatively on productivity. And we're expecting the central bank to perform some magic, monetary policy that will change the value of the naira. No, it is the incompetence, comprehensive incompetence at all levels of leadership that's kept the naira where it is, pushing it further down. It was not the CBN that gave dollars to delegates. So you're draining, the supply is less, there's oil theft, and your progressive governors, what solutions? As a matter of fact, I would have been excited to hear that they went to the vice president with solutions. The other time, the governors wrote to the president, giving him a list of 32 issues that needed to be addressed. Whereas, what they ought to have done, in my view, would have been to, okay, this issue number one, this is the details of what should be done. And some of them will say, this is how we dealt with some aspect of it in our states. So you see, speech making is being mistaken for responsible leadership. Everybody dressed up, went to see the vice president, told him what needed to happen. The president himself addressed the press. All of them are the people Nigerians are looking up to. What are they delivering? That's what to worry about. So progressive, best of luck to them. But you know, progress can go in two directions. There's development and there's decay. If you're climbing a hill, you're progressing to a higher height. If you're tumbling down the hill, you are rolling down to the depth, to the valley. And it would seem to me that we are not climbing any hill, we are tumbling down. The cost, the expense of what they do, they've been doing, the cost of a public administration, etc. So to that extent, My take is that no. Whereas it is good to talk about it, whereas it will be wonderful to see a transformation, the timing, the circumstance, and the orientation of our leaders do not seem to be heading in that direction.
Well, Prof, you know, this conversation is going to go on. We're hoping that it will not go on forever on ASUU and ASUU strike. We're hoping that there will be a quick resolution to the issues, you know, facing us and also facing our tertiary education system, particularly public tertiary education system. We have to thank you for sharing your insights and thoughts with us this morning and congratulate you once again on your elevation. We've been speaking with Professor Okey Ikechukwu, who is Executive Director of Development Specs Academy. Thank you once again for coming on.